All right, guys, so the harness is finished, and I kind of wanted to go over all the features of the harness and kind of just give you guys an overview of how it all came together. So I'll start off with, like the materials I used in order to make the harness. This is all the good stuff. It's all Tezvell wire with DR25 Raychem heat shrink. Everything's labeled, everything's booted. You can see all the labels, the injector 1, 2, so on, all the way down. All the EV1 injectors are booted. And so first thing I'll go over is like everything that you need to just run the engine, okay? And then after that, I'll go over all the other stuff that I've included in the harness that, you can hook up stuff to later on, or extra sensors or switches or whatnot. So we'll start off with just, the main stuff you need, obviously, to start your engine. So you got your coils, you've got your injectors, you've got your throttle position sensor, IAT, your coolant temp sensor, which is under there. And then we have the cam signal, which is here on this 3-pin, and the crank trigger, okay? So the cam and the crank trigger, well, let me go and show you guys some of the wire that I bought. I got all my wire from a race spec. So go on their website, check them out. They have a lot of stuff. All the stuff that I got for this harness is from them. So I made a little thing here to hold all the materials. This is all the wiring that we have and all the Raychem heat shrink, and then some glued heat shrink, some open crimps, all the Deutsch connectors and all that. So pretty much we'll start with the cam and crank, okay? The cam and crank sensors they use a shielded 3-conductor wire, okay? And this is Tezvell, okay? So we'll go back out here and show you guys. So it takes 2 of those. So these are both shielded. You shield the wire, or you ground the shield on the ECU side, and then on the the sensor side, you basically just tie it up into the harness. Okay, you don't want to ground both ends. You only want to ground one end on that, so that it acts like kind of like an antenna, and then any kind of noise, it picks it up and shunts it to ground. Okay, so we have that. So those are the basic things you need to start the engine and run it, okay? So now I'll go over what is in the engine bay and then also what is inside the car, okay? This is basically where you're gonna be transitioning it through your firewall. This is kind of the area where you transition it. So everything on this side of this is gonna be engine bay stuff, and everything on this side will be in the car. First up, we have obviously the lambda sensor here. That's just outside the boot there, because typically on a 2J, your lambda sensor is going to be right in this area or in a downpipe right over here, wherever. But that's basically where you want that. The next one up, this is just a spare 12 volts in ground. Okay, and I'll explain a little more with that. The reason that's here when we get down to this end. Okay, so 12 volts in ground with a 20 amp fuse. So you can run some relays or whatever you want with it. The next thing is this ground here. This ground is basically for your coils. Okay, so you want your coils to be grounded to the head. Okay, and then that also goes through the harness to the battery, also to the ECU. Okay, so we have that. Next up, this is aux, which are outputs 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so these aux outputs would be for things such as like triggering a nitrosolenoid, triggering meth injection, triggering anything you can think of, okay, whatever your imagination can think of. That would be for triggering that. Okay, and it's all on Deutsch connectors, so when I send this harness to the guy, basically what he's gonna do is he's gonna get a bunch of these that correspond with the connectors in the harness, and he'll just pin it and run his wire to where he needs to run it, okay? And that's the way I'm gonna do all the harnesses. If you guys like contact me and want a harness, that's the way I'm gonna suggest we build it, because it's not hard to pin a Deutsch connector. It's very, very simple. And you get to put the wire where you want. Because I don't know where you're gonna put your sensors. You know, I don't know if you're gonna run a coolant pressure sensor or if you're gonna run whatever. I don't know. So it's best if you guys run the extra stuff yourself, okay? It's just my opinion. I think it'll be a much cleaner install, and it won't be like the harnesses you order online that have a bunch of wire that you have to loop up somewhere and hide. This will be much more professional looking, okay? Anyway, back to where we were. So after this, the next one up would be this 6-pin connector here, okay? This 6-pin connector will be for all your extra sensors, all right? And it comes with 4 sensors, 5 volts, and ECU ground, okay? So you would run that gets kind of set up in here, or you could run it over here to your firewall, to like a remote mount area. I don't know, where if you have like a block where your sensors are mounted, then you could run it to there. Or you could, if you're not gonna use it, you could just tie it up out of the way. Remember, this is all DR25 heat shrink, so it's really good with abrasion resistance and also really good with heat. And all the Tefzel wire is good with heat too. So you can tie it up next to your runners or your head or whatever, and it's not gonna hurt it, okay? So yeah, you could run whatever you want off of that. Like I said, 4 sensors there. You could run coolant pressure, you could run oil temp, you could run your flex fuel sensor, whatever you want to do, okay? You got 4 of those. Okay, that's it for the engine side. So coming out of your grommet, this direction, you got everything that's in the car. I pretty much try to include everything that ECUMasters can do. So we have 2 more of the analog ends here, 5 and 6, and a 5 volt and a ground. Okay, so you could run some sensors inside the car, or if you wanted to remote mount your map sensor, okay, right now I'm using the internal map sensor, but if you wanted to remote mount your map sensor like I have in this car, this is the way I have it in here because it keeps it away from the heat and vibration. So it's mounted near the ECU, and then I just pin it from there. But you could run that on the inside of the car. We have aux 4, 5, and 6. So these are outputs. Basically, aux 4 is typically used for your tachometer. And then 5 and 6, I have one of them as a fuel pump, triggering the fuel pump, a relay in here for the fuel pump. And then you have, what do we have here? H-bridge, did I already say that? I don't remember, but H-bridge 1A, 1B, 2A, and 2B. We have your CAN high and low. So if you wanted to run like a CAN switch, this is your CAN bus. And then here is TXD and RXD. So the TXD and RXD would be like, it's like a data stream. So if you wanted to run like a data logger, the EDL data logger that has Bluetooth, you can run it directly to that, and you can data log to a SD card, okay? So you have that. And then these are your switches right here. This would be switches that you can run like launch control. So I have that hooked to, as you can see, I have it just pinned like that. And also my fuel pump pinned right there. So those are just a couple things that, you know, I did temporarily so that I could get this started and running and tested. But we have launch control right here on the loud button. So that would be launch control, starter, ignition. That all runs to my little Temu relay box here. I don't recommend these. This is basically for my engine stand. I did not want to spend a lot of money on just a relay box for my engine stand. But the relays are really cheap, and I changed out a bunch of the fuses because they're junk too. So, but I'm still ahead because it was only like 30 bucks, I think, for that whole relay box, and runs everything. So, okay, moving on to power. What we have here for power is this one here with the stripe on it is switched 12 volts. Okay, so that would be like an ignition switch. Now, This is, I'm sending the guy this with these little connectors on here, but he's gonna cut these off, and then you would run like a DTP connector on that. A DTP connector is a higher current DT connector. So this is just temporary for my little setup here, okay? So you would not wanna run this on your car. That's not what you would wanna do. You'd wanna run it on a good connector. Anyway, back to what I was saying. You have switched here, switch 12 volts, and then you have constant battery right here. This will all be marked once we cut those off, and then you have one more that goes to everything else, the ECU, your lambda sensor, and anything else that needs 12 volts is that one. And then I have one more that is dedicated. Most people don't do this, but I run one more dedicated to the coils, okay? You don't have to do that. It's not 100% necessary to run one dedicated 12 volts to your coils, but I do because I've run into issues in the past with this car of like spark blowout, and if you wanted to like try and dwell these coils more than what the factory recommends, it's gonna require more current, and you wanna make sure you have the proper gauge wire. So you'll be able to dwell these coils all the way up to like 5 or 6 seconds, which it's not recommended, but you can if you wanted to. I just know that it kind of makes it future-proof to where, you know, you won't have an issue and it's already in the harness and you're good to go, okay? So that's pretty much it. And then you have your ground here, okay? This ground here has 3 separate grounds in it. And the ECU, I believe, has 2 or 3. And then one that also goes up to the, that joins the ground that goes to the head. And then we also have the main ground going to the block. Oh, over here, the block. Okay, so it's got plenty of ground. And that's it. That's all you need to run your engine and hook up a bunch of sensors, nitrous, your MAC valve. Oh, I didn't mention that. You could come off of this 12 volts to run your MAC valve and one of your auxes, okay? So then you could run your MAC valve with that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And you're good to go. So let's go ahead and see if we can start it. I've been running this thing off and on, just kind of dialing things in to make it, you know, make everything work. And so I'll show you a little bit about the engine stand itself. Ignition is here. You see it primed the fuel pump for 2.5 seconds. Starter button is here. And then this is that switch I was telling you about for the 2-step, okay? So everything is on here. We can check. Everything is reading. It's at 65 degrees, which means I've been running it for a little bit. The IAT tells you everything, and then the lambda sensor is warming up. So let's see if that goes active. There, it went active. You see it? It just went active. So we can go ahead and start it up. Start logging. So as you can see, it runs super smooth, no trigger errors. Got good oil pressure, 70 pounds of oil pressure. That idle's pretty good. I'll give the launch control a try. All right, so I'm gonna have to start wearing earplugs when I do that because it's really loud, especially with open exhaust, and I'm only about 4 feet from it. But anyway, that was the launch control. I got it set around $4,000, so it really makes some flames coming out of the exhaust. So anyway, everything is running really good. And when I send this harness out, I'm basically gonna send this log file, or the tune rather, to the guy I sold this harness to, and then he can just load it into his ECU and hit the start button. Easy as that, okay? So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I just wanted to show you this and show you all the materials we used, and I'll be making harnesses. You know, the more people that reach out, the more, you know, material I'll buy and kind of stock up for it and all that. But the next thing we're gonna be doing is I'm gonna be machining a better bracket here for the cam sync, and also a bracket for the crank trigger too. Because right now, if you remember a couple of videos ago, I made kind of like a little DIY cam trigger and crank trigger, and I want to make it more permanent. So I ordered some aluminum that is much thicker, and we're going to CNC something. So that should be the next video of kind of showing you guys how to draw it up in CAD and going directly to machining, you know, creating a G code and all that. So anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this video and learned something. And yeah, give me a shout if you want to order a harness. Talk to you later.